Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Empire of Glass. The autumn rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse as Russell Wade stared at the Seattle skyline. 48 stories up, the city looked like a circuit board of light and shadow. Behind him, untouched on a marble counter, sat a glass of 18-year-old Macallan and divorce papers. Russell hadn't come from money. The son of a factory worker and a waitress in Detroit, he clawed his way through life with a singular focus that both impressed and unnerved those around him. By 30, he'd built Wade Secure into the most sought-after private security firm on the West Coast, specializing in executive protection and digital security architecture for the ultra-wealthy. Now, at 42, his hands bore the calluses of both keyboard and combat, his mind equally adept at coding and killing. The reflection in the glass showed a man whose physical discipline matched his mental one, 6'2", with the lean musculature of someone who trained with military precision. His dark hair was threaded with silver at the temples, and a thin scar ran through his right eyebrow, a souvenir from his early days as private security in South America. His phone buzzed. It was Liam Brody, his oldest friend and head of operations at Wade Secure. "Tell me you have something," Russell said, his voice unervingly calm. "She's with him again. The Drake Hotel, room 1142. They've been there for 2 hours." Russell closed his eyes. Bianca Wade, his wife of 8 years, was in a hotel room with Perry Galloway, the divorce attorney she'd supposedly hired to protect her interests in what she called an amicable separation. "The recording equipment?" Russell asked. "Active since they walked in. Audio and video feeds are clean. You want me to send the link?" "Not yet. Let run. I want everything." "Russ, you sure about this? Once we go down this road." "They chose this road, Liam. Not me." Russell took a slow breath. "How's our friend at the bank?" "Cooper's cooperating. Bianca's transfer of $3 million to offshore accounts is documented. The trail leads right to her and Galloway's joint venture. And the judge. Judge Winters is known for his stance on infidelity. Traditional values, old school. If we present evidence of Bianca's affair with her own divorce attorney, plus the financial misconduct." "It's not enough," Russell interrupted. "Not for what I need." Silence hung on the line before Liam spoke again. "The other matter, it's in motion." The girl agreed to testify. Russell's reflection showed the barest hint of a smile. "Good. Keep me updated." After hanging up, Russell finally reached for the scotch, rolling the amber liquid in the crystal tumbler. He thought about how he'd met Bianca at a charity gala 9 years ago. She'd been vibrant, intelligent, working as a curator at the Seattle Art Museum. He'd been captivated by her knowledge of Renaissance art and her ability to navigate high society with ease, something Russell, despite his wealth, had never mastered. He'd given her everything: the lifestyle, the connections, the freedom to pursue her passions. 3 years ago, they tried for children, but after 2 miscarriages, Bianca had withdrawn. Russell had respected her pain, giving her space. Now he understood that the space had been filled by someone else. The rain intensified, sheets of water distorting the cityscape. Russell drained his glass and set it down with careful precision. "Computer, activate House Protocol Alpha," he commanded. The AI system responded immediately. House Protocol Alpha activated. All external communications secured, surveillance activated, security level maximum. Russell picked up the divorce papers, scanning the details of what Bianca's lawyer, her lover, had prepared. It was breathtakingly greedy. 65% of all assets, full ownership of the penthouse and Hampton estate, control of his philanthropic foundation, and alimony that would drain even his considerable resources. His phone buzzed again with a text from Liam. "You need to see this now." Russell opened the secure link to the Drake Hotel surveillance. The video showed Bianca, her honey blonde hair cascading over bare shoulders, laughing as Perry Galloway poured champagne. "To taking that cold bastard for everything he's worth," Galloway toasted, his handsome face flushed with victory and expensive alcohol. Bianca clinked her glass against his. He suspects nothing. That's the beauty of marrying a self-made man. They're so focused on their empires, they never see the knife until it's between their ribs. The foundation alone is worth 9 figures, Galloway said, setting down his glass to kiss her neck. Once we liquidate the assets and move them through the Cayman structure, he'll be left with nothing but his precious company, Bianca finished, and even they'll be crippled once we pull the investors I've cultivated. As their conversation devolved into more intimate activities, Russell closed the feed. He felt neither rage nor pain, only a cold, crystalline clarity. He opened his safe and removed a small black journal. Inside were handwritten notes dating back 3 years. Observations, suspicions, fragments of conversations. Russell had begun documenting inconsistencies in Bianca's behavior long before he had concrete evidence of her betrayal. It wasn't paranoia, it was pattern recognition. Russell turned to a fresh page and wrote a single sentence. Endgame initiated. Chapter 2. The Architect's Gambit. For months before the divorce filing, Russell had already begun assembling the pieces of what would become his masterpiece of retribution. The key to Russell's strategy was understanding that revenge, like security, required comprehensive intelligence and precise execution. He didn't just want to win the divorce. He wanted to systematically dismantle the lives of everyone involved in the betrayal. His first move had been to contact Dennis Cooper at First Maritime Bank, where both Russell's business and personal accounts were held. Cooper owed Russell. 3 years earlier, Russell's team had quietly handled a potentially career-ending situation involving Cooper's daughter and a predatory college professor. No police, no scandal, but the professor had mysteriously resigned and left the country with a permanent limp. Cooper, I need complete records of all transactions from joint accounts and Bianca's personal accounts for the past 5 years. Russell, you know I can't legally. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm asking for records I'm entitled to as an account holder. I just need them without Bianca being notified. 2 days later, Russell had confirmation of his suspicions. Over the past 3 years, Bianca had been siphoning funds, small amounts at first, growing bolder as time passed. The money trail led to a web of accounts that eventually connected to Perry Galloway. Russell's next move was to understand his adversary. Galloway was a rising star in Seattle's legal community, known for representing wealthy women in high-profile divorces. His success rate was impressive, but Russell knew that kind of record often came with cut corners. He contacted Saul Romano, a former FBI forensic accountant who now worked as a consultant for Wade Secure. Saul, I need everything on Perry Galloway. Professional history, case records, finances, personal life. Especially any cases that seem too good to be true. Romano delivered within a week. Galloway's got a pattern. He targets wealthy couples, somehow always ends up representing the wife, and walks away with hefty fees while the husband gets cleaned out. There's something else. 3 of his former clients died within 2 years of their divorces, leaving substantial estates. Cause of death. Natural causes, apparently. 1 heart attack, 1 drowning, 1 prescription overdose. Russell absorbed this information, adding it to his mental chessboard. And his personal life? That's where it gets interesting. Despite his reputation as a ladies' man, he's been seeing someone consistently for about 3 years. Based on hotel records and restaurant reservations, it's your wife, Russell. 3 years. The timing aligned perfectly with Bianca's first miscarriage. While Russell had been grieving the loss of their future, Bianca had been building a new one with Galloway. Russell's next target was Judge Harold Winters, who would likely preside over the divorce proceedings. Winters was known for his conservative stance and intolerance for infidelity, but Russell needed more than the judge's general disposition. He needed leverage. For this, he turned to Mia Cordova, a brilliant young hacker who'd once tried to breach Wade Secure systems. Instead of pressing charges, Russell had hired her. I need everything on Judge Winters, Mia. Electronic communications, financial records, skeletons. Even judges have digital footprints, Mia had replied confidently. Her findings were illuminating. Judge Winters was beyond reproach financially, but his communications revealed a complicated relationship with his estranged son, who had left the church and married his male partner against the judge's wishes. The judge's private emails showed a man torn between his strict religious beliefs and his love for his son. Russell didn't want to blackmail the judge. That would be crude and risky. Instead, he saw an opportunity to understand the man's psychological pressure points. Justice might be blind, but judges were human, with all the complexity that entailed. The final piece came in the form of Zoe Palmer, a young paralegal at Galloway's firm. Russell learned through his network that Zoe had been uncomfortable with some of Galloway's methods, particularly his handling of a recent divorce case that had left the husband destitute and suicidal. Russell arranged a seemingly chance meeting at a coffee shop near her apartment. "Ms. Palmer," he'd said, sitting down across from her startled face. "My name is Russell Wade. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance in Perry Galloway." "Mr. Wade, I don't think I should be talking to you," she stammered, gathering her things. "Before you go, you should know that I'm aware of the Thornton divorce file, the one Galloway asked you to alter." The color drained from her face. "How did you? I have resources. What matters is that I also know you kept the originals." "Smart move." Russell slid a business card across the table. "I don't want to ruin your career, Ms. Palmer. I want justice. When you're ready to talk about what really happens at Galloway's firm, call me." 3 days later, his phone rang. Zoe Palmer was ready to testify about Galloway's systematic falsification of evidence, witness tampering, and judicial manipulation. As Russell moved his pieces into position, Bianca remained oblivious, believing her husband was distracted by business concerns and accepting her narrative of a marriage that had simply run its course. On the night before Bianca planned to serve him with divorce papers, Russell sat in his home office, reviewing his strategy. On his computer screen was a complex flowchart mapping every contingency, every possible move and countermove in the battle to come. Liam entered without knocking, a privilege earned through decades of friendship. "Everything's in place," Liam reported. "Though I still think you should just confront her with what you know, take the reasonable settlement, and move on with your life." Russell looked up from his screen. "This isn't about money, Liam." "Then what is it about?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're preparing for war over a woman who betrayed you." "It's about justice," Russell said quietly, "and ensuring that Galloway and Bianca never do this to anyone else." Liam studied his friend's face. "This is more than your usual calculated response, Russ. This is personal." "They made it personal," Russell replied, closing his laptop. "Tomorrow, Bianca thinks she's making her first move. She doesn't realize the game began months ago, and she's already lost." The next morning, when Bianca placed the divorce papers on the breakfast table with a practiced expression of regretful determination, Russell merely nodded and said he'd have his lawyer review them, exactly as she'd expected. What she couldn't see was the predatory satisfaction beneath his composed exterior as another piece moved precisely according to his design. Chapter 3. Pawns and Players. The first courtroom skirmish took place 6 weeks after Bianca served Russell with divorce papers. It was a preliminary hearing to establish temporary support and living arrangements while the divorce proceeded. Russell arrived with his attorney, Martin Frost, a deliberate choice that had puzzled Bianca and Galloway. Frost was known for handling simple wills and real estate closings, not high-stakes divorces against sharks like Perry Galloway. What they didn't know was that Russell had specifically selected Frost for his unremarkable reputation and apparent lack of killer instinct. Judge Winters presided, his stern face betraying nothing as he reviewed the initial filings. Bianca sat beside Galloway, elegantly dressed in a conservative navy suit that strategically highlighted her vulnerability while maintaining her sophistication. The calculated image of a loyal wife discarded by a cold, workaholic husband. Galloway rose first, exuding confidence. "Your Honor, Mrs. Wade has been a devoted partner for 8 years, supporting my clients' business endeavors while building their social connections and philanthropic presence. Now that Mr. Wade has achieved the success he desired, he's discarding her. We're seeking temporary support of $75,000 monthly, continued residence in their penthouse, and full access to all joint accounts pending final resolution. Martin Frost stood, adjusting his ill-fitting glasses. Your Honor, my client is prepared to provide reasonable temporary support of $25,000 monthly and allow Mrs. Wade to remain in the penthouse while maintaining his residence at their second property. However, we request that access to joint business accounts be frozen pending financial discovery. The request was reasonable, too reasonable, in fact. Galloway had expected resistance, aggressive countering. The mild response left him momentarily off balance before he recovered. Your Honor, $25,000 monthly is insufficient to maintain Mrs. Wade's established lifestyle, particularly given Mr. Wade's net worth exceeding $100 million. Judge Winters looked at Russell, who sat impassively. Mr. Wade, you've built a substantial security business, correct? Yes, Your Honor. Wade Secure provides protective services and security solutions. And during your marriage, was Mrs. Wade involved in building this business? Before Russell could answer, Galloway interjected. Mrs. Wade was instrumental in cultivating the high-net-worth clients that form the backbone of Wade Secure's clientele. Her social connections and charity work directly led to contracts with 3 Fortune 500 executives. Russell noticed Judge Winters' slight frown at Galloway's interruption. Another small piece moving into place. Mr. Wade, the judge prompted. My wife had no operational role in my company, Your Honor. However, I acknowledge that her social efforts were beneficial. That's why I'm prepared to be generous in temporary support while we assess the full financial picture. The judge considered briefly. I'm ordering temporary support of $40,000 monthly, continued residence for Mrs. Wade in the penthouse, and Mr. Wade at the secondary residence. Joint personal accounts will remain accessible to both parties, but business accounts will require dual authorization for withdrawals exceeding $10,000. We'll reconvene in 60 days for the full financial hearing. As they left the courtroom, Bianca brushed past Russell with a triumphant smile, whispering, "This is just the beginning." Russell merely nodded politely. Indeed it is. Later that evening, Russell met with his real legal team in a secure conference room at Wade Secure headquarters. Unlike bumbling Martin Frost, these attorneys were specialists in complex financial litigation, digital evidence, and matrimonial law. Frost played his part perfectly, said Catherine Zhao, the razor-sharp litigator who was actually orchestrating Russell's legal strategy from behind the scenes. Galloway thinks he's facing an amateur. And Judge Winters? Russell asked. Responded exactly as profiled, confirmed Alejandro Velez, the team's legal psychologist. He was visibly irritated by Galloway's aggressive posturing and interruptions. More importantly, he's now formed a preliminary impression of Bianca as potentially opportunistic. Russell nodded. What about our paralegal? Zoe Palmer's testimony is secured and corroborated, Catherine replied. We have affidavits from 2 other former Galloway firm employees supporting her claims of evidence tampering. They'll be deposed next week. An Exhibit Z? Russell asked, referring to the centerpiece of his strategy. Liam entered the room, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Right here, digital and physical copies secured, chain of custody documented by licensed investigators. It's bulletproof. Russell took the bag, examining its contents through the clear plastic, a small flash drive, and a handwritten journal. The contents are disturbing, Liam warned. Even knowing what they were planning, seeing it laid out so explicitly. This isn't just about my divorce, Russell said quietly. The journal contains Galloway's notes on his previous cases, including the 3 clients who died under suspicious circumstances after their divorces were finalized. He and Bianca were playing a long game. Catherine leaned forward. Are you saying they intended to kill me? Eventually. The journal outlines their 3-year plan. First, isolate me from friends and family, which Bianca has been subtly doing. Second, create a narrative of my mental instability through manufactured incidents. Third, execute the divorce to maximum financial advantage. Fourth, orchestrate an accident after the settlement, with Bianca as the sympathetic widow. The room fell silent as the full scope of the betrayal sank in. "We should take this to the police," Catherine finally said. Russell shook his head. "Not yet. Plans and notes aren't enough to convict. We need to catch them in action, which is precisely what the divorce proceedings will do." "It's risky," Alejandro cautioned. "If they realize you know." "They won't," Russell assured him. "Their confidence is their vulnerability. Bianca believes I'm emotionally devastated, and Galloway thinks he's facing an outmatched opponent. Their plan requires my cooperation as an unwitting victim. That gives us time." As the meeting concluded, Liam remained behind. "You didn't tell them everything that was in the journal, did you?" he asked once they were alone. Russell's expression hardened. "They don't need to know that Bianca's miscarriages weren't natural. That Galloway convinced her to terminate our children to avoid complicating their plan." His voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. "Some details are irrelevant to the legal strategy." "But not to you," Liam observed quietly. "No," Russell agreed. "Not to me." Outside, the Seattle rain continued its relentless descent, washing the city clean as Russell Wade prepared to unleash a storm of his own making. Chapter 4: Queen's Sacrifice. The next phase of Russell's plan required patience. For 2 months, he maintained the illusion of a man resigned to an unpleasant but inevitable divorce. He allowed Bianca her small victories, watched as she and Galloway grew increasingly confident. During this time, Russell played another card, selective vulnerability. He asked to meet Bianca for coffee to discuss matters civilly, a request she accepted with barely concealed satisfaction. They met at a quiet cafe in Pike Place Market, neutral territory. Bianca arrived 15 minutes late, a power move Russell had anticipated. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as she sat down, her Hermes scarf artfully arranged to frame her face. "Of course, Russell. Despite everything, I want this to be amicable." Russell allowed a calculated hesitation before speaking. "I've been thinking about what went wrong between us." Bianca's expression shifted to practiced sympathy. "We simply grew apart, Russell. You were always working, building your empire." "I thought that's what we both wanted," he said, vulnerability seeping into his voice. "Security, stability, especially after the miscarriages." A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed her face before disappearing. "Those were difficult times for both of us." "They were," Russell agreed. "I should have been more present, more attuned to what you needed." Bianca hadn't expected this admission. Her perfectly manicured hand reached across the table to touch his briefly. "That's surprisingly self-aware of you." "I've had time to reflect," Russell said. "I'm not contesting the divorce, Bianca. I just want to understand what you're hoping to achieve." "A fair settlement," she replied smoothly. "Recognition of my contributions to our life together." Russell nodded slowly. "The foundation means a lot to you, doesn't it?" "It's been my primary focus for years," she confirmed. "The work we've done with trafficking survivors." "I'm prepared to let you have controlling interest," Russell interrupted. "The foundation, the Hampton estate, a reasonable settlement. No protracted legal battle." Bianca couldn't fully conceal her surprise or her triumph. This was progressing even more easily than she and Galloway had anticipated. "That's generous, Russell. I just want this over with," he said tiredly. "I've built one life from nothing. I can do it again." As they parted, Bianca was already texting Galloway, exactly as Russell had predicted. What she didn't know was that their conversation had been recorded, not by Russell, but by 2 independent witnesses seated nearby, former clients of Galloway, who had their own reasons to assist Russell's cause. Later that week, Russell was invited to the office of Bianca's foundation under the pretense of discussing the transition of control. The Wade Foundation for Survivor Advocacy occupied the top floor of a downtown building, its modern space overlooking Elliott Bay. Bianca greeted him in the conference room, uncharacteristically alone. "Perry had a court appearance," she explained, gesturing for Russell to sit. "I thought it might be easier to discuss this without attorneys anyway." Russell nodded, taking the offered seat. "I appreciate that. I've prepared some preliminary paperwork," Bianca said, sliding a folder across the polished table. "Just an outline of how the foundation transition might work." Russell opened the folder, scanning the documents with apparent casualness while his trained eye caught every detail. The proposal was breathtakingly greedy, stripping him of all authority while leaving him with substantial financial obligations. "This seems comprehensive," he said mildly. Bianca's smile was predatory beneath its veneer of reasonableness. "The Foundation's work can't be interrupted by our personal situation. I'm simply ensuring operational continuity." Russell nodded thoughtfully. "I notice Miranda Keene isn't mentioned in the leadership transition." "Miranda's priorities have shifted," Bianca said smoothly, referring to the Foundation's operations director. "She's taking a step back." This was news to Russell, who knew that Miranda had been the driving force behind the Foundation's most successful programs. "That's unfortunate. Her expertise with trafficking survivors is unparalleled." "We're moving in a different direction," Bianca replied dismissively. "Less direct service, more policy advocacy. Perry has connections in Washington that will amplify our impact." Russell kept his expression neutral, even as another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The Foundation's substantial endowment would be much easier to access if its programs shifted from direct services to policy advocacy, a conveniently vague area where funds could disappear with minimal oversight. "I see," Russell said. "Well, I'll have my lawyer review these proposals." He closed the folder and stood. "One question, though. Has the board been informed of these plan changes?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Bianca's face. "The board serves at my discretion as executive director." "Of course," Russell conceded. "It's just that several major donors specified their funds for direct survivor services. Gerald Humphrey, in particular, was explicit about his 8-figure gift. Financial restructuring is part of any organizational evolution," Bianca replied, her tone cooling. "The donors will understand." Russell doubted that very much, particularly since Gerald Humphrey was a close personal friend who had entrusted his donation to the Foundation largely on Russell's recommendation. As Russell left the Foundation offices, he made a call. "Catherine, I need you to prepare for expedited discovery on the Foundation finances. And contact Gerald Humphrey. Tell him we need to talk." 2 weeks later, the second preliminary hearing took place. This time, the focus was financial discovery, the comprehensive disclosure of assets that would form the basis for the final settlement. Russell arrived with Martin Frost again, maintaining the charade of inadequate legal representation. Bianca and Galloway entered with the confident air of predators closing in on wounded prey. Judge Winters called the hearing to order. "Today we address financial discovery. Mr. Galloway, your client's disclosures have been filed." "Yes, Your Honor," Galloway confirmed. "Mrs. Wade has provided complete financial records as required." Judge Winters turned to Martin Frost. "And Mr. Wade's disclosures?" Frost fumbled with his papers. "Your Honor, we've provided basic disclosures, but we're requesting additional time for the more complex business holdings." Galloway pounced. "Your Honor, this is a transparent delay tactic. Mr. Wade is clearly attempting to hide assets or move them offshore before the settlement." "That's a serious accusation, Counselor," Judge Winters noted. "Do you have evidence of such activities?" "We have documentation of unusual movement in several accounts," Galloway replied confidently, passing a folder to the judge. "As you can see, large sums have been transferred through multiple entities in recent months." The judge reviewed the documents with a frown. "Mr. Frost, how do you respond to these allegations?" Frost adjusted his glasses nervously. "Your Honor, those transactions represent normal business operations for a security firm with international clients." However, he hesitated, glancing at Russell, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "However, my client has authorized me to introduce a motion for expanded discovery regarding the Wade Foundation's finances." Galloway scoffed. "The Foundation is a separate legal entity with its own governance structure. Its finances are not relevant to these proceedings." "Actually, Your Honor," Frost continued with unexpected firmness, "we have reason to believe that Foundation funds have been improperly diverted. As both Mr. Wade and Mrs. Wade serve as officers, this directly impacts the marital estate." Judge Winters raised an eyebrow. Do you have evidence supporting this claim? We do, Frost confirmed, producing a sealed envelope. This affidavit from Miranda Keene, Operations Director of the Wade Foundation, details unauthorized transfers totaling over $12 million to entities controlled by Mrs. Wade, and he paused for effect. Her attorney, Mr. Galloway. The courtroom fell silent. Bianca's face drained of color, while Galloway quickly recovered. These are baseless accusations, Your Honor. Ms. Keene was terminated for incompetence and is clearly retaliating. Ms. Keene's termination occurred after she questioned these transfers, Frost countered, producing another document. We also have testimony from 2 board members who were never consulted about these transactions, contrary to the Foundation's bylaws. Judge Winters' expression darkened. Mr. Galloway, are you in fact a beneficial owner of any entity receiving Foundation funds? Galloway hesitated just long enough to confirm his guilt before responding. I provide legal services to various organizations that may have received grants from the Foundation, but there's nothing improper in those relationships. Your Honor, Frost pressed, we request a forensic audit of the Foundation's finances and a freeze on all Foundation assets pending investigation. Additionally, given Mr. Galloway's apparent conflict of interest, we move that he be disqualified from representing Mrs. Wade in these proceedings. Bianca gripped Galloway's arm in panic as Judge Winters considered the motion. I find sufficient cause for concern, the judge finally ruled. I'm ordering a complete forensic audit of the Wade Foundation and freezing its assets pending results. As for disqualification, Mr. Galloway, you'll need to show cause why you should continue as counsel given these apparent conflicts. We'll address that at a separate hearing next week. As the courtroom emptied, Russell caught Bianca's furious glare. For the first time, he allowed himself a small, cold smile in return. Later that evening, Russell met with the real architects of his strategy, Catherine Zhao, Alejandro Velez, and Gerald Humphrey himself, the Foundation's largest donor and, unknown to Bianca, a former prosecutor specializing in financial crimes. The Foundation gambit worked perfectly, Catherine reported. Judge Winters has assigned Carlton Financial Forensics to conduct the audit. They're the best in the business and completely independent. Galloway's disqualification hearing is set for Monday, Alejandro added. He'll fight it, but with the evidence we've compiled, his position is untenable. Gerald Humphrey, a formidable man in his 70s, fixed Russell with a stern gaze. I trusted you both with that money, Russell. Trafficking survivors deserve better than to be pawns in your marital chess match. I agree completely, Russell replied without defensiveness. That's why Miranda Keene has been quietly duplicating all the Foundation's record for the past year. The survivors' programs are continuing under temporary management, and none of the direct service funds have been touched. Gerald's expression softened slightly. You anticipated this. I've learned to prepare for betrayal, Russell said simply. The Foundation will emerge stronger, with better governance safeguards. As the meeting concluded, Liam entered with a flash drive. It's ready, he said, handing it to Russell. Exhibit Z is complete. Russell took the drive reverently, like a soldier receiving a final, devastating weapon. Perfect timing. Galloway's disqualification will force Bianca to find new counsel, disrupting their coordination. When she realizes the Foundation scheme has been exposed, she'll panic and make mistakes. What exactly is on that drive, Russell? Gerald asked, eyeing it warily. Justice, Russell replied, and the end of Perry Galloway's career. As Gerald left, Catherine lingered. Russell, we have them on financial impropriety. The Foundation audit alone will devastate their position. Are you sure you want to proceed with Exhibit Z? Once deployed, there's no going back. Russell's expression hardened. They didn't just try to take my money, Catherine. They took my future. My children. Catherine's eyes widened slightly, but she asked no further questions. Some vengeance was too personal to share, even with allies. Chapter 5. Knight's Sacrifice. The disqualification hearing was brutal and swift. Despite Galloway's protests, Judge Winters removed him as Bianca's counsel. citing irreconcilable conflicts of interest and evidence of potential ethical violations. The judge also referred the matter to the State Bar Association for investigation. Bianca was forced to retain new representation quickly. She hired Olivia Mendoza, a competent but less aggressive attorney who lacked Galloway's intimate knowledge of their strategy and his personal stake in the outcome. With Galloway sidelined, Russell moved to the next phase of his plan, isolating Bianca from her support network. The Wade Foundation's board called an emergency meeting in response to the court-ordered audit. Russell attended as a voting member, while Bianca arrived flanked by her new attorney and visibly nervous. The boardroom at the Foundation's headquarters was tense as Gerald Humphrey called the meeting to order. As the largest donor, he held significant informal authority despite Bianca's executive director position. In light of serious allegations regarding financial improprieties, this board must take immediate action to protect the Foundation's mission and assets, Gerald began. The preliminary forensic report indicates approximately $17 million have been directed to entities with questionable connections to the Foundation's stated purpose. Bianca leaned forward. Those grants were all properly documented and approved. By whom? Interrupted Miranda Keene, who had been reinstated pending investigation. Not by me, and not by this board. As executive director, I have discretionary authority, Bianca began. Within strictly defined parameters, Gerald cut in. Your authority is limited to grants under $250,000 without board approval. These transfers, some exceeding $3 million, required full board review. Olivia Mendoza attempted to redirect. This is clearly related to the ongoing divorce proceedings. Mr. Wade is using his influence with certain board members to undermine my client's position. Russell, who had remained silent, finally spoke. This has nothing to do with our divorce, Ms. Mendoza. The Foundation's mission, supporting survivors of trafficking and abuse, is separate from our personal matters. I'm here as a board member concerned about significant financial irregularities. Alleged irregularities, Bianca snapped. These funds were directed to policy advocacy groups expanding our mission's reach. Gerald slid a folder across the table. Perhaps you could explain why 3 of these advocacy groups share the same Cayman Islands address as an LLC jointly held by you and Perry Galloway? Or why 4 others were incorporated just days before receiving million-dollar grants? Or why none of them have any track record of anti-trafficking work? The blood drained from Bianca's face. The board will now vote on the motion to temporarily remove Bianca Wade as executive director pending completion of the audit and investigation, Gerald announced. You can't do this, Bianca protested. I built this foundation. Actually, Russell interjected quietly, we built it together. For survivors who trusted us with their future. The vote was unanimous, with only Bianca abstaining. She was removed as executive director, her foundation credentials and access revoked effective immediately. As the meeting adjourned, Bianca confronted Russell in the hallway, her composed facade cracking. You manipulative bastard. You planned this all along. No, Bianca, Russell replied calmly. You planned this all along. I merely exposed it. She stepped closer, voice lowering. You have no idea what I'm capable of, Russell. This isn't over. Actually, it is, came a voice from behind them. They turned to find Gerald Humphrey with 2 plainclothes officers. Bianca Wade, these detectives would like to ask you some questions regarding potential wire fraud and misappropriation of charitable funds. As Bianca was escorted away, not under arrest, but clearly shaken, Russell felt no triumph. Only a cold certainty that justice was unfolding exactly as designed. That evening, Russell received an unexpected visitor at his temporary residence, a waterfront condo he'd purchased through a shell company years earlier as a potential safe house. The building's security alerted him to Zoe Palmer's arrival. Ms. Palmer, Russell greeted her, noticing her agitated state. What brings you here? Zoe glanced nervously over her shoulder as she entered. Galloway knows I'm working with you. Someone broke into my apartment today. My laptop is gone, and my files were ransacked. Russell guided her to a seat. Are you certain it was Galloway? The break-in happened exactly 40 minutes after I was served with a subpoena for the disbarment hearing, she explained. That timing isn't coincidental. No, it's not, Russell agreed. Did you report it? Yes, but there's more. Zoe leaned forward, lowering her voice despite being in a secure location. Before the foundation audit was announced, I overheard Galloway on the phone. He said, if Wade keeps pushing, implement contingency B. The boat trip might need to happen sooner. Russell's expression remained neutral, but internally, another piece clicked into place. The journal he'd acquired contained references to contingency plans for dealing with uncooperative husbands in Galloway's previous cases. One of his former clients had drowned in a boating accident 6 months after her divorce settlement. Thank you for bringing this to me, Russell said. You should stay somewhere safe until the hearing. I can't afford a hotel for potentially weeks, and I'm afraid to stay with friends. If he found them, you'll stay in my company's secure housing, Russell decided. It's a building we maintain for clients requiring protection. No one will find you there. After arranging for Zoe's security detail and transportation, Russell contacted Liam. Galloway's getting desperate, he reported. He just tried to intimidate our key witness. Not surprising, Liam replied. The Bar Association has expanded their investigation to include 3 of his previous cases. His career is effectively over, even without Exhibit Z. But Exhibit Z ensures he never practices law anywhere again, Russell noted. More importantly, it establishes the pattern connecting him to Bianca long before divorce proceedings. Speaking of Bianca, her new attorney requested a settlement conference, Liam informed him. They're offering to drop all claims to the foundation and business in exchange for the Hampton estate and $8 million in cash. Russell laughed softly. They still think this is about money. Isn't it? At least partly. It's about justice, Liam. Comprehensive, irrefutable justice. The next day, Russell attended the settlement conference with both Martin Frost, still maintaining their cover, and Catherine Zhao, who was introduced as a financial consultant. Bianca appeared strained, the pressure of the foundation investigation clearly taking its toll. Olivia Mendoza presented their revised settlement offer, emphasizing Bianca's willingness to compromise. My client is prepared to relinquish all claims to the Wade Foundation and Wade Secure in exchange for the Hampton property, art and furnishings valued at approximately $3 million, and a cash settlement of $8 million, Mendoza proposed. This represents a significant concession from our initial position. Russell listened impassively before turning to Catherine, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Martin Frost replied. Given the ongoing criminal investigation into foundation funds, all assets must remain accessible pending resolution. My client has not been charged with any crime, Mendoza objected. These investigations are clearly part of a vindictive campaign by Mr. Wade. Ms. Mendoza, Catherine interjected smoothly. The financial forensics don't lie. $17 million of charitable funds were diverted to shell companies controlled by your client and her former attorney. The Hampton estate was purchased with commingled funds, including $4.2 million traced directly to the foundation. It's not Mr. Wade's to give away. Bianca paled. That's not true. We purchased the Hampton house before the foundation even existed. The original purchase, yes, Catherine agreed. But the $6.8 million renovation completed last year was funded primarily through foundation resources. The property is now subject to asset forfeiture if the investigation confirms criminal misappropriation. Bianca turned to Russell, desperation breaking through her composed facade. What do you want, Russell? Just tell me what you want to end this. For a moment, Russell allowed himself to really look at the woman he had once loved. The mother his children would have had if she hadn't chosen to terminate their pregnancies to simplify her exit strategy. He felt nothing but a cold, crystalline clarity. I want justice, he said simply, for the foundation's beneficiaries, for the other husbands you and Galloway victimized, for our unborn children. Bianca's expression froze. What are you talking about? Russell placed a manila folder on the table. Your medical records, Bianca. Not miscarriages, elective terminations. scheduled within days of meetings with Galloway, according to both your calendars. The color drained completely from Bianca's face. How did you? The how doesn't matter, Russell interrupted. What matters is that while I grieved our lost future, you were actively destroying it to clear the path for your exit strategy. Mendoza attempted to regain control of the situation. These accusations are irrelevant to the divorce proceedings and potentially based on illegally obtained information. Perhaps, Russell conceded, but they speak directly to character and credibility, which the court will certainly consider when evaluating testimony regarding financial matters. He stood, gathering his materials. This settlement conference is clearly unproductive. We'll proceed with full discovery and trial preparation. As Russell turned to leave, Bianca called after him, her voice breaking. Russell, wait. We can work this out. We're beyond that point, Bianca, he replied without turning back. See you in court. Chapter 6, Rook's Gambit. 2 days before the final divorce hearing, Perry Galloway was found dead in his car in the parking garage of his downtown condominium. The initial police report indicated an apparent suicide, a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, with a handwritten note found on the passenger seat. When Russell received the news from Liam, his reaction was measured. Was it actually suicide? Police seem to think so, Liam replied. The note referenced the Bar Association investigation and his untenable professional situation. Russell's eyes narrowed. Have our sources give me a copy of that note. Galloway was many things, but suicidal wasn't one of them. Within hours, Russell's suspicion was confirmed. The handwriting analysis showed subtle but definitive discrepancies from Galloway's known writing samples. More telling was the gun, a .38 revolver registered to Bianca Wade 3 years earlier. She's eliminating loose ends, Russell observed to Catherine Zhao during their final strategy session. Galloway knew too much, and he was becoming a liability as the investigations intensified. That's a serious accusation, Catherine cautioned. Without proof. The proof is coming, Russell assured her. I've had Galloway under surveillance for months. His building's security system captured everything. By that evening, Russell had obtained the security footage showing Bianca entering Galloway's building 2 hours before his estimated time of death, and leaving 30 minutes later, visibly agitated. The footage didn't prove murder, but it placed her at the scene, something she had denied when questioned by police. Russell provided this information to Detective Morgan Hayes, a former client who now headed the city's financial crimes unit. Hayes was already investigating the foundation misappropriation and had natural jurisdiction over a death potentially connected to that case. As Russell had anticipated, Bianca attempted to use Galloway's death to delay the divorce proceedings. Her attorney filed an emergency motion citing the traumatic impact of her close colleague's suicide and the need for additional time to prepare without Galloway's institutional knowledge of the case. Judge Winters denied the motion. The court sympathizes with the tragic circumstances, but these proceedings have already experienced significant delays. The final hearing will proceed as scheduled. The morning of the hearing, Seattle's typical overcast sky had darkened to a thunderous gray, rain lashing against the courthouse windows as if nature itself were setting the stage for the drama to unfold. Russell arrived early, accompanied by Catherine Zhao, now openly serving as his lead counsel, and Martin Frost, whose role had shifted to that of financial advisor. The courtroom was unusually crowded. The high-profile nature of the case and the scandalous allegations surrounding the foundation had attracted media attention. Bianca entered flanked by Olivia Mendoza and a young associate. She was dressed in somber navy, her face carefully composed into an expression of dignified suffering. Russell noted the calculated choice, the grieving friend, the wronged wife, the dedicated philanthropist under unjust attack. Judge Winters called the court to order. Before we begin, I want to address the unusual circumstances surrounding this case. The death of Mr. Galloway is tragic, but it does not directly impact these proceedings. Additionally, while there are ongoing investigations into the Wade Foundation, this court's purview is limited to the equitable distribution of marital assets. Ms. Zhao, You may present your opening statement. Catherine rose, her presence commanding immediate attention. Your Honor, this case began as a seemingly straightforward high-asset divorce, but discovery has revealed a pattern of systematic financial misconduct, deception, and breach of fiduciary duty by Mrs. Wade. We will demonstrate that Mrs. Wade, in concert with her former attorney, Mr. Galloway, diverted substantial charitable assets for personal use, concealed marital assets, and engaged in a years-long conspiracy to defraud both my client and the charitable foundation they jointly established. Olivia Mendoza countered with equal force. Your Honor, Mr. Wade has weaponized this divorce proceeding in a vindictive campaign to destroy my client's reputation and work. Mrs. Wade has dedicated years to building the foundation's mission and supporting her husband's business success. The alleged financial irregularities are simply legitimate operational decisions being mischaracterized to gain advantage in these proceedings. The initial testimony focused on financial matters. Forensic accountants detailed the complex web of transactions that had diverted foundation funds through shell companies, ultimately benefiting Bianca and Galloway. Board members testified to being excluded from decision-making despite bylaws requiring their approval. By mid-afternoon, Bianca took the stand. Under Mendoza's careful questioning, she portrayed herself as a dedicated wife who had supported Russell's ambitions while building a meaningful philanthropic legacy. The foundation became my life's work, Bianca testified, voice catching artfully. When our marriage began to deteriorate due to Russell's emotional unavailability, especially after our losses, I threw myself into helping trafficking survivors rebuild their lives. When asked about the financial irregularities, she offered plausible explanations for each contested transaction. The grants to these new organizations represented our strategic pivot toward policy advocacy. Perry, Mr. Galloway, offered legal guidance on structuring these relationships, but all funds went to legitimate charitable purposes. Then came cross-examination. Catherine Zhao approached with measured confidence. Mrs. Wade, you testified that the foundation became your life's work after your marriage deteriorated. When exactly did this deterioration begin? Bianca hesitated slightly. It was gradual, but became noticeable perhaps 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Catherine repeated. Yet you began a romantic relationship with Perry Galloway approximately 3 years and 7 months ago. Did you not? The courtroom tensed as Mendoza objected. Relevance, Your Honor? My client's personal relationships after the marriage deteriorated aren't pertinent to asset division. I'm establishing timeline and credibility, Your Honor, Catherine responded. Mrs. Wade's characterization of events directly impacts assessment of her testimony regarding financial matters. I'll allow it. Judge Winters ruled. Please answer the question, Mrs. Wade. Bianca's composure slipped momentarily. I don't recall the exact timing. Catherine produced a document. Your Honor, Exhibit 27. Hotel records showing Mrs. Wade and Mr. Galloway sharing accommodations in Vancouver 3 years and 7 months ago, while Mrs. Wade was still actively trying to conceive a child with my client. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom as Bianca's face paled. Mrs. Wade, Catherine continued relentlessly, you testified earlier about losses that contributed to the marriage's deterioration. Were you referring to miscarriages? Yes, Bianca whispered. Yet medical records indicate that you had 2 elective procedures, not miscarriages. Procedures scheduled within days of meetings with Mr. Galloway, according to both your calendars. Mendoza stood again. Your Honor, these medical records were not properly disclosed during discovery. They were provided in supplemental discovery last month, Catherine countered, producing the documentation. Your office acknowledged receipt. As the afternoon progressed, Catherine methodically dismantled Bianca's testimony, exposing contradictions, timeline inconsistencies, and financial duplicity. By the time Bianca stepped down, her carefully constructed image had crumbled. The final witness was Miranda Keene, who detailed her discovery of the financial irregularities and subsequent termination. Her testimony directly contradicted Bianca's explanations for the contested transactions, providing documentation that established clear intent to divert funds. As the day's proceedings drew to a close, Judge Winters addressed both parties. "We'll resume tomorrow morning with closing arguments. Given the seriousness of the allegations raised today, I expect both parties to be prepared to address the implications for asset division." That evening, as Russell reviewed the day's developments with his team, a breaking news alert appeared on his phone. Police investigating Perry Galloway's death as homicide, not suicide. Liam, who had been monitoring police communications, provided details. Ballistics don't match the suicide scenario. The angle of entry and powder residue are inconsistent with self-infliction. They're officially treating it as a homicide investigation now. And Bianca? Russell asked. "Officially a person of interest," Liam confirmed. "Detective Hayes is obtaining warrants for her electronic devices and residence based on the security footage and the gun registration." Catherine frowned. "This complicates tomorrow's proceedings. If Bianca is formally charged before the divorce is finalized, it changes nothing," Russell interrupted. "The divorce must be completed first, with full findings regarding the financial misconduct. The criminal matter will follow its own course." The next morning, tension in the courtroom was palpable. Bianca appeared visibly strained, dark circles beneath her eyes despite careful makeup. Her attorney seemed equally tense, likely aware of the developing criminal investigation. Judge Winters called for closing arguments. Olivia Mendoza went first, attempting to salvage what remained of Bianca's position by focusing on her contributions to Russell's business success and the legitimate aspects of her foundation work. Despite the allegations and innuendo, Mrs. Wade built substantial value in both the business and foundation through her networking and social connections. She deserves fair compensation for those contributions, separate from any disputed transactions that may require further review. Catherine Zhao's closing argument was clinical and devastating. "Your Honor, the evidence presented demonstrates not merely financial misconduct, but a years-long conspiracy to systematically defraud both Mr. Wade and the charitable foundation established to help vulnerable people. Mrs. Wade's actions were calculated, deliberate, and executed with complete disregard for fiduciary duty, marital obligations, and basic ethical principles." Judge Winters listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When both attorneys concluded, he addressed the courtroom. "This case presents extraordinary circumstances that require careful consideration. I'll take the matter under advisement and issue my ruling tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As the court adjourned, Russell noticed Detective Hayes enter and approach Bianca, requesting she accompany him for additional questioning. The timing was perfect, exactly as he had anticipated. The final act was about to begin. Chapter 7, Endgame. The morning of Judge Winters' ruling dawned clear and cold, the storm having broken overnight. Russell arrived at the courthouse early, centered and focused despite the momentous nature of the day ahead. The courtroom filled quickly with spectators drawn by rumors of scandal and the previous day's dramatic developments. Russell noticed Detective Hayes seated in the back row, his presence confirming that the criminal investigation was advancing. Bianca entered with her attorney, her usual poise noticeably strained. The questioning by police had clearly taken its toll, though she had not yet been formally charged in Galloway's death. Judge Winters entered precisely at 9 a.m., his expression grave. "After careful consideration of the testimony and evidence presented, I am prepared to render my decision in the matter of Wade versus Wade." The courtroom fell silent as the judge continued. "This case has revealed conduct that goes far beyond the usual contentious nature of high-asset divorces. The evidence establishes a pattern of systematic financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and exploitation of charitable resources by Mrs. Wade." Bianca stiffened visibly as Judge Winters detailed his findings, methodically outlining each instance of misappropriation and deception. "The court finds that Mrs. Wade diverted approximately $17 million from the Wade Foundation through improperly authorized grants to entities she controlled, either directly or jointly with Mr. Galloway. These funds were subsequently used for personal benefit, including luxury purchases, property improvements, and offshore investments. Judge Winters paused, looking directly at Bianca. Furthermore, Mrs. Wade's testimony regarding these transactions was not credible, contradicted by documentary evidence and testimony from multiple witnesses with direct knowledge of foundation operations. Turning to the matter of asset division, the judge's ruling was unequivocal. In light of these findings, this court orders the following. All foundation assets shall be placed under independent receivership pending resolution of the ongoing criminal investigation. The marital residence and all properties purchased or substantially improved during the marriage shall be awarded to Mr. Wade. Bianca gasped audibly as Judge Winters continued. Mrs. Wade shall retain her personal property and premarital assets valued at approximately $800,000. Given the substantial misappropriation of foundation funds, which, while not marital assets per se, were diverted in part to acquire assets claimed by Mrs. Wade, no additional settlement is warranted. The ruling continued with technical details, but the substance was clear. Bianca would leave the marriage with nothing but what she had brought into it 8 years earlier. Judge Winters was concluding his ruling when Russell made his move. Your Honor, before we conclude, I request permission to present additional evidence that has direct bearing on these proceedings. Mendoza objected immediately. Your Honor, the evidence phase has concluded. This is improper and prejudicial. The nature of this evidence, Judge Winters inquired. It relates directly to the conspiracy between Mrs. Wade and Mr. Galloway, and contains information relevant to both these proceedings and the ongoing criminal investigation, Russell explained. Judge Winters considered briefly. I'll allow it, but it must directly relate to matters already before this court. Russell nodded to Catherine, who approached the bench with a sealed evidence package. Your Honor, we present Exhibit Z. Audio recordings and documentation detailing the conspiracy between Mrs. Wade and Mr. Galloway to defraud Mr. Wade and the Foundation, dating back over 3 years. As Catherine set up the audio equipment, Bianca leaned urgently toward her attorney, whispering frantically. Mendoza's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Your Honor, Mendoza interjected, we request a brief recess to review this alleged evidence before it's presented. Denied, Judge Winters ruled. The court will evaluate its admissibility as it's presented. Russell stood. Your Honor, may I present Exhibit Z? At the judge's nod, Russell played the first recording. Galloway's voice filled the courtroom. The Foundation gives us the perfect vehicle. Wade trusts you completely with it, which means we can move significant funds without scrutiny. Bianca's voice responded. What about the board? Miranda especially watches the books like a hawk. We'll create legitimate seeming organizations for the grants. On paper, there'll be advocacy groups, but the funds will flow back to our controlled entities offshore. Once we've moved enough capital, we'll execute the divorce strategy. The recording continued, revealing explicit discussions of their plan to maximize the divorce settlement before eventually eliminating Russell entirely. References to arrangements similar to those made for Galloway's previous clients whose spouses had died under suspicious circumstances. Most damning was a recording from just days before Galloway's death. Bianca, the Foundation investigation changes everything. They'll trace it all back to us. Galloway, we need to accelerate the contingency plan. Wade knows too much. Bianca, no, you're becoming a liability, Perry. The Bar Association has your previous cases under review. It's only a matter of time before they connect the deaths. Galloway, don't threaten me, Bianca. Remember who suggested the miscarriages to simplify our exit strategy. We're in this together. Bianca, not anymore. The courtroom was silent as the recording ended, the final conversation between Bianca and Galloway before his murder. Bianca sat frozen, her face ashen. Mendoza appeared equally stunned, clearly hearing this evidence for the first time. Russell turned to Judge Winters. Your Honor, in addition to these recordings, Exhibit Z includes Mr. Galloway's journal detailing their 3-year conspiracy, including notes on his previous cases where former clients' husbands died under suspicious circumstances after substantial settlements were secured. Judge Winter's expression had hardened into stone. The court will take custody of these materials immediately. Detective Hayes, I believe these materials are relevant to your investigation. Hayes was already moving forward. Yes, Your Honor. Mendoza made a final desperate attempt. Your Honor, the provenance of these recordings is highly questionable. They may have been obtained illegally. All recordings were made with the consent of at least one party to the conversation. In compliance with state law, Catherine interjected. Mr. Galloway's journal was legally obtained from his office by a cooperating witness. Judge Winters addressed the courtroom. In light of this new evidence, which substantiates and expands upon the court's findings, I am modifying my ruling. All assets of the marriage are awarded to Mr. Wade. Mrs. Wade shall retain only her personal effects and clothing. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for immediate consideration of criminal charges. He turned to Bianca, his contempt evident. Mrs. Wade, this court has rarely witnessed such calculated malice and breach of trust. The manipulation of charitable resources intended to help society's most vulnerable victims for personal enrichment is particularly reprehensible. As Judge Winters concluded the proceedings, Detective Hayes approached Bianca. Adrian Wade, you're under arrest for the murder of Perry Galloway and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Russell watched impassively as Bianca was handcuffed and led from the courtroom, her carefully constructed world collapsing completely. The woman who had planned to take everything from him, including his life, was leaving with nothing. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Russell declined comment, allowing Catherine to issue a brief statement emphasizing the Foundation's commitment to its mission and the establishment of new governance safeguards. As they walked to the waiting car, Liam fell in a step beside Russell. It's done, exactly as you planned. Russell's expression remained composed. Not quite finished. There's one more piece to place. Chapter 8, Exhibit Z. The full impact of Exhibit Z extended far beyond the divorce proceedings. Within days of its revelation in court, the district attorney expanded the investigation to include 3 suspicious deaths connected to Galloway's previous cases. Bianca, held without bail on murder charges, faced a cascading series of indictments: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, misappropriation of charitable funds, money laundering, and first-degree murder. The evidence against her was overwhelming, bolstered by Galloway's detailed journal and the damning recordings Russell had accumulated over months. 2 weeks after the divorce ruling, Russell attended a special meeting of the Wade Foundation's reconstituted board. Miranda Keene had been appointed interim executive director, with Gerald Humphrey serving as board chair. The Foundation's reputation has suffered, Gerald acknowledged, addressing the assembled board members. But the prompt exposure of the misappropriation and our transparent cooperation with authorities have preserved donor confidence. Miranda nodded agreement. Our core programs never stopped operating. The survivors we serve have been protected from disruption, which was Russell's primary concern throughout this ordeal. Russell, seated quietly at the end of the table, accepted their grateful acknowledgement with a modest nod. His measured response obscured the ruthless calculation that had guided every step of his strategy, a strategy that had recovered not just the diverted funds, but the Foundation's integrity. After the meeting, Gerald pulled Russell aside. I've been following the criminal case developments. The scope is disturbing. How so? Russell asked, though he already knew. The investigation into Galloway's previous cases has revealed a pattern. 3 former clients, all wealthy women who secured substantial divorce settlements with Galloway's help, subsequently lost their ex-husbands to accidents within a year. In each case, the former wife inherited additional assets through life insurance or estate provisions. Russell nodded. Galloway found the perfect accomplice in Bianca. She brought social credibility and access to potential victims through her charity work. Gerald studied Russell with newfound wariness. You suspected this from the beginning, didn't you? This wasn't just about your divorce. I recognize patterns, Russell replied simply. My security work trains me to see connections others might miss. Once I confirmed Bianca's betrayal, I began looking for the larger picture. Gerald wasn't entirely satisfied. The recordings, the surveillance, the timing of everything. It seems almost as if you set a trap. Russell finished. I protected myself, Gerald. Nothing more. But both men knew it was much more. Russell had orchestrated not merely a defense, but a comprehensive destruction of those who had betrayed him, allowing their own actions and ambitions to be the instruments of their downfall. Later that evening, Russell met with Detective Hayes, an upscale restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. Their relationship had evolved from client-provider to something approaching friendship, though both maintained professional boundaries. The DA is offering Bianca a deal, Hayes informed him after they ordered. 25 years if she provides testimony against Galloway's former clients involved in their respective husbands' deaths. Would she take it? Russell asked. Her new attorney is pushing for it. Without a deal, she's looking at life without parole. Hayes studied Russell over his whiskey glass. You know, most people would be celebrating a victory like yours. Total vindication, full financial recovery, justice served. I don't view justice as cause for celebration, Russell responded. Just restoration of proper order. Hayes set down his glass. There's something I've been wondering. Galloway's journal, the one that provided the roadmap to all the previous cases. How did Zoe Palmer access it? By all accounts, Galloway was pathologically secretive. Russell's expression revealed nothing. People like Galloway always document their cleverness. It's not enough to execute the perfect crime. They need to record their brilliance for posterity. That's their vulnerability. Hayes wasn't satisfied. And the recordings? Some of those conversations happened in highly secure locations. I designed security systems for a living, detective. I know their weaknesses better than anyone. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but Hayes' unspoken question lingered between them. How far had Russell gone in engineering his enemy's destruction? The detective recognized the hand of a master strategist who had manipulated not just people, but entire systems, legal, financial, and social, to achieve his aims. What Hayes couldn't know was that Russell's meticulous planning had begun not with Bianca's betrayal, but years earlier. The security expert had long maintained contingency plans for various threat scenarios, including betrayal by those closest to him. When his suspicions about Bianca first arose, he had simply activated protocols already in place, protocols designed with the cold precision that had made Wade Secure the industry leader. As they parted, Hayes offered a final observation. You know what impresses me most about all this, Wade? Not once did you lose control. Even when you discovered what they'd done, the fraud, the planned murder, the personal losses, you never acted from emotion. Russell considered this assessment. Emotion clouds judgment, detective. Justice requires clarity. But later that night, alone in the penthouse that had once been their shared home, Russell allowed himself to acknowledge what he had revealed to no one. The white-hot rage that had fueled his methodical destruction of Bianca and Galloway. The emotions had been there, not absent, but channeled into the precision of his revenge. He moved to his office and unlocked a hidden safe concealed behind an abstract painting. Inside was a small silver frame containing the only ultrasound image of what would have been their first child, a daughter, according to the genetic testing Bianca had undergone before terminating the pregnancy, without his knowledge. This, more than the financial betrayal or murder conspiracy, had sealed their fate. Russell had given Bianca everything, including his guarded trust, something he had granted to no one else. In return, she had not just betrayed him, but erased the future they had planned together. Russell replaced the frame and closed the safe. Justice had been served, but some wounds remained beyond healing. The only peace came from knowing that those responsible had paid the full measure for their choices. Chapter 9. Ashes and Iron. 1 year after the divorce ruling, Russell Wade stood at the edge of his property in the Cascade Mountains, watching the sunset paint the sky in fierce oranges and reds. The 200-acre compound represented his fresh start, remote, secure, and completely his own. The past year had seen the full unraveling of Bianca and Galloway's criminal enterprise. Bianca had eventually accepted the prosecutor's deal, providing testimony that implicated two of Galloway's former clients in their ex-husbands' deaths. Her cooperation had reduced her sentence to 30 years, still effectively a life term for a woman who had once moved through Seattle's highest social circles. The investigation had expanded to include financial institutions that had facilitated the money laundering operations, resulting in substantial penalties and regulatory reforms. The Wade Foundation, now under Miranda Keene's leadership, had not only recovered its diverted funds but emerged stronger, with governance structures that made such exploitation impossible in the future. For Russell, the resolution brought not joy but quiet vindication. He had retreated from Seattle's social scene, focusing instead on expanding Wade Secure's operations while maintaining a deliberately low profile. The company now specialized in identifying and neutralizing complex financial fraud schemes, a natural evolution given Russell's first-hand experience. Liam joined him at the property's edge, handing him a tumbler of scotch. $30 million in new contracts this quarter. Turns out corporations are very interested in preventing Wade Galloway scenarios within their organizations. Russell allowed himself a small smile. Ironic that their scheme has become a cautionary case study. They stood in companionable silence, watching the light fade over the mountains. Russell had built this compound with lessons learned from his ordeal, not just the physical security measures, which were substantial, but the financial and legal structures that protected his assets from future threats. Catherine called, Liam eventually said. Grace Parsons reached out again, asking to meet with you. Russell's expression hardened. Bianca's sister had maintained her distance during the divorce and criminal proceedings, neither supporting nor denouncing her sister. Only after Bianca's conviction had Grace sought contact, claiming she had information Russell should know. My answer hasn't changed, Russell replied. Whatever she wants to share comes too late to matter. She's persistent, says it concerns the foundation, something even Bianca doesn't know. Russell considered this briefly before shaking his head. The foundation is restored. The past is settled. I have no interest in reopening those wounds. His phone buzzed with a secure message from Gerald Humphrey. Board approved the Trafficking Prevention Initiative. Full funding secured. You were right again. This brought genuine satisfaction. The Foundation's new direction, focused on preventing trafficking through education and economic empowerment in vulnerable communities, represented everything Bianca had pretended to care about while actually exploiting the cause for personal gain. You've rebuilt everything they tried to take, Liam observed. The company's stronger, the Foundation's doing more good than ever, and your personal wealth has more than recovered. Not everything, Russell corrected quietly, thinking of the silver-framed ultrasound hidden in his new office safe. Some losses remained permanent. Later that evening, as Russell reviewed security protocols for a new client, his private line rang, a number known to fewer than 5 people. Detective Hayes, now promoted to captain. Wade, Russell answered. Thought you should hear this directly from me. Hayes began without preamble. Bianca attempted suicide in prison last night. She survived, but left a confession implicating 3 more of Galloway's former clients in their husbands' deaths. Russell absorbed this information silently. The interesting part, Hayes continued, is that she also confessed to planning your murder from the beginning of your relationship. According to her statement, you were targeted specifically for your wealth and isolation. No close family, few personal connections outside business. That's consistent with the evidence we found, Russell replied evenly. There's more. She claims she wasn't the architect, that she was recruited by Galloway as part of an ongoing operation targeting wealthy individuals. If true, this conspiracy extends beyond what we've uncovered so far. Russell's mind immediately began mapping the implications, the potential connections to cases he'd peripherally tracked over the years. Send me what you can. I'll see if it connects to any patterns in our database. After ending the call, Russell moved to his secure terminal, accessing files he'd compiled on suspicious deaths among wealthy business owners nationwide. If Bianca's confession was true, Galloway had been part of something larger, a network of predators using the legal system and personal relationships as weapons. His phone buzzed again with a message from an encrypted source. Grace Parsons knows about the network. That's what she wants to discuss. Russell stared at the message, reassessing the situation. If Grace possessed information about a larger conspiracy, her persistent attempts to contact him took on new significance. He made a decision and sent a single-word reply. When? The response came immediately. Tomorrow. Neutral location. Russell closed the secure terminal and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit forest surrounding his mountain retreat. The divorce and its aftermath had been merely one battle in a longer war, a war against those who exploited trust and manipulated the systems meant to protect the vulnerable. If a larger network existed, Russell would identify its members, understand its methods, and systematically dismantle it, just as he had done with Bianca and Galloway. Not from vengeance, but from the same cold, implacable sense of justice that had guided him through his personal ordeal. He lifted his scotch in a silent toast to the moonlit mountains. Some men sought peace after surviving betrayal. Russell Wade had found his purpose instead, becoming the architect of justice for those who couldn't design their own. As he set down his glass, Russell felt not happiness, but something more enduring. The resolute satisfaction of a man who had faced the worst of human betrayal and emerged not broken, but tempered like steel. Whatever conspiracy had targeted him had made a fatal miscalculation. They had chosen a man incapable of forgetting, unwilling to forgive, and methodical in his retribution. The game wasn't over. It had merely evolved, and Russell Wade was always several moves ahead. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Devin Bacon had learned patience the hard way. 12 years on the Detroit Police Department's Homicide Division taught him that justice wasn't about quick draws or dramatic confrontations. It was about building airtight cases brick by brick. Now, at 42, he ran his own security consulting firm from a modest office in suburban Michigan, analyzing corporate vulnerabilities and conducting background checks. The pay was better, the hours more predictable, and he got to watch his 9-year-old son Jake grow up. He'd met Brenda Dennis at a charity gala 7 years ago. She'd been working as an executive assistant at Dunbar Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing company specializing in industrial components. Beautiful, ambitious, with auburn hair that caught the light just right and a smile that seemed genuine. They married within a year. Jake came along 14 months later, a bright-eyed boy who loved baseball and comic books. Devin had noticed the changes about 8 months ago. Brenda's late nights increased. Her phone became a guarded object, face down on every surface, password protected with a complexity that seemed excessive. She'd started going to the gym religiously, upgraded her wardrobe, and developed a sudden enthusiasm for her boss's various company events. Clinton Dunbar's events. Clinton Dunbar was everything Devin wasn't. Inherited wealth, Ivy League pedigree, the kind of polished arrogance that came from never facing real consequences. He'd taken over Dunbar Industries from his father and ran it with ruthless efficiency. Brenda spoke about him often. Too often. Clinton thinks this, and Clinton says that peppered her conversations like unwanted seasoning. Devin had done what any former detective would do. He investigated quietly. Discreet surveillance. Digital forensics on their shared computer that revealed deleted browser histories pointing to affair advice forums. Credit card statements showing hotel charges on days she claimed to be at client meetings. He documented everything in a locked file at his office, building his case with the same methodical approach that had closed 47 murder investigations. But he'd held back from confronting her. Something told him to wait to see how deep this went. His instincts, honed over a dozen years of reading liars and sociopaths, whispered that there was more to this than simple infidelity. That Tuesday morning, Devin had breakfast with Jake, chocolate chip pancakes, the kid's favorite. Brenda rushed through the kitchen in a designer suit, kissing Jake's forehead without breaking stride. "Big presentation today," she said, grabbing her keys. "Don't wait up tonight." "Good luck," Devin replied, watching his son's face fall slightly. Jake had stopped asking his mother to his baseball games 2 months ago, tired of the rejections. After dropping Jake at Riverside Elementary, Devin spent the morning working a case for a law firm, analyzing security footage of a warehouse theft. Tedious work, but it paid well. He was reviewing timestamps when his phone rang at 1:47 p.m. "Mr. Bacon, this is Principal Courtney Sanders at Riverside Elementary. Jake collapsed during recess. The paramedics are taking him to St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come immediately." The world tilted. Devin's training kicked in. Stay calm, get facts, act decisively. He was in his car within 90 seconds, calling Brenda as he sped toward the hospital. She answered on the 4th ring. Background noise, laughter, clinking glasses, music. "Devin, I'm kind of busy. Jake collapsed at school. They're taking him to St. Mary's ER. Silence. Then, "Oh God, is he okay?" "I don't know. I'm heading there now." "Where are you?" It's Clinton's birthday lunch. The whole executive team is here. It's important." Devin's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Our son is in an ambulance." I know, but I can't just leave. Clinton's announcing the new VP promotions. I've worked toward this for months. You're closer anyway. You handle it. Call me with updates." The line went dead. Devin drove in silence, his mind cataloging this moment with crystal clarity. Not our son might be dying, but I can't leave the party. Not I'm on my way, but you handle it. He'd been a fool to wait. Chapter 2. The Collapse. St. Mary's Hospital emergency room was controlled chaos. Devin badged his way through with the directness of someone who'd spent years navigating bureaucracy, finding Jake in Bay 7. His son lay unconscious, an oxygen mask over his small face, for lines snaking into his arm. Dr. Margaret Arnold, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, was reviewing charts with 2 nurses. "Mr. Bacon?" She gestured him to a consultation area outside the bay. "I'm Dr. Arnold. Jake's stable for now, but we're running extensive tests. His collapse wasn't a simple faint. His symptoms suggest possible poisoning. His blood work shows elevated levels of certain compounds. We've sent samples to toxicology, but it'll take time. Has he eaten anything unusual? Been around chemicals?" Devin's mind raced. Normal breakfast at home. School lunch. Nothing unusual. We'll keep him for observation. The next few hours are critical. Devin sat beside Jake's bed, holding his son's small hand. The boy's breathing was shallow but steady. Rage built in Devin's chest. Not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, calculating fury that made him dangerous when he'd been a cop. Someone had done this. Someone had hurt his child. His phone buzzed. "Brenda, how is he?" Devin typed back. "Unconscious. Possible poisoning. Still at lunch?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "OMG. I'll get there when I can. Keep me posted. Not I'm leaving right now. Not I'm sorry. Just when I can." 2 hours later, Detective Kurt Monroe arrived with a younger officer. Devin knew Kurt from his police days. Solid investigator, played things by the book. "Devin," Kurt said, his expression grim. "We need to talk. Principal Sanders called us when the paramedics mentioned possible poisoning. School security footage shows something you need to see." They moved to a private conference room. Kurt pulled out a tablet, queued up the footage. "This is from the school's main entrance, 7:52 a.m. this morning." The video showed the usual morning drop-off chaos. Then Brenda's silver Lexus pulled up. But she didn't just drop Jake off. She got out, walked him to the entrance, and handed him something. A small bottle. Jake drank from it, handed it back, and she quickly returned to her car. "Keep watching," Kurt said. The footage jumped to the parking lot camera. Brenda's car sat there for another 10 minutes. She was on her phone, animated conversation. Then she pulled out the bottle, wiped it down with what looked like a cloth, and put it in her purse. "We found this in the trash near her parking spot at Dunbar Industries." Kurt placed an evidence bag on the table. Inside was a small blue sports drink bottle. Maintenance found it this afternoon. Still had residue. We're testing it now, but I'd bet my badge it's the source. Devin's world crystallized into sharp focus. His wife. His wife had poisoned their son. There's more, Kurt continued. We did some preliminary checking. Jake's life insurance policy was increased to $500,000 3 months ago. Brenda's the sole beneficiary if anything happens while you're indisposed. Indisposed? We pulled phone records with a warrant. Brenda's been in contact with a guy named Sergio Orozco. He's got priors for assault, attempted murder. Their last call was yesterday. 37 minutes. The pieces assembled themselves. Not just an affair. Not just wanting out of the marriage. They were planning to kill Jake for the insurance money, and likely Devin too. Make it look like accidents. Grieving widow walks away with life insurance, probably straight into Clinton Dunbar's arms. Where is she now? Devin asked, his voice eerily calm. Still at Dunbar Industries. We're getting a warrant for her arrest, but we need the talk screen to confirm. Another few hours. Devin, Kurt leaned forward. I know what you're thinking. Let's handle this. By the book. Devin looked at his friend, then back at the tablet screen, frozen on Brenda's face as she wiped down the bottle. Of course, he said. By the book. But Kurt knew him well enough to catch the lie. Chapter 3. The investigation begins. Jake woke up at 11 p.m., groggy and confused. Dr. Arnold confirmed the toxicology results. A carefully calibrated dose of rat poison mixed with antifreeze, enough to cause severe symptoms, but administered in a quantity that suggested the poisoner wanted a slow, agonizing death that could be blamed on mysterious illness. They'd pumped his stomach and started chelation therapy. He'd recover, but it would take time. Brenda arrived at 11:30 p.m., playing the distraught mother with practiced precision. Devin watched her performance with clinical detachment. The tears that came on cue, the trembling hands, the "oh my baby" routine. She'd always been a good actress. Where were you? Devin asked flatly. The lunch ran late, then I had to finish the presentation. I came as soon as I could. She reached for Jake's hand. Devin intercepted her, gripping her wrist firmly. Don't touch him. Her eyes flashed with something. Fear? Anger? Devin, what's wrong with you? The police are coming to arrest you. They have footage of you giving Jake the poison this morning. They have the bottle. They know about the insurance policy. Brenda's face went through a remarkable transformation. Shock, calculation, then cold fury. The mask dropped completely. You can't prove anything. That footage could show anything. I gave him a sports drink because he wanted it. The bottle they found in your office building trash? The one you wiped down. I want a lawyer. You'll need several. Detective Monroe arrived with 2 uniformed officers. Brenda Bacon, you're under arrest for attempted murder of a minor, conspiracy to commit murder, and child endangerment. The Miranda rights followed, mechanical and final. As they led her away in handcuffs, she turned to Devin. Clinton will have me out by morning. His lawyers are the best. You'll never prove this was intentional. We'll see, Devin replied. After she was gone, Devin returned to Jake's bedside. His son was sleeping again, peaceful now despite the IVs and monitors. Jesse Graves arrived an hour later, Devin's former partner from his detective days, now running his own private investigation firm. Got your message, Jesse said. He was a big man, 6'3", and built like a linebacker, with a shaved head and a scar across his left eyebrow from a domestic violence call gone sideways. What do you need? Everything on Clinton Dunbar and Sergio Orozco. Financials, communications, movements for the last 6 months. And I need it yesterday. Jesse pulled out a tablet. Already started when I heard. Clinton Dunbar, age 45, net worth approximately $80 million, runs Dunbar Industries. Clean record, but that's not surprising for rich guys. Sergio Orozco, age 34, enforcer for hire. Did 5 years for manslaughter out on parole. He's been doing odd jobs, mostly intimidation, collection work. Connection to Dunbar? Working on it. But here's something interesting. Jesse pulled up a document. Dunbar Industries is in financial trouble. Not public knowledge yet, but they're hemorrhaging money. A major contract fell through last quarter. Clinton's been liquidating personal assets quietly. So he needs money, desperately. And your wife's life insurance policy on Jake isn't the only one. She took out a $2 million policy on you 4 months ago. Devin absorbed this. They were going to kill us both. Take the insurance money and disappear together. Looks that way. But here's where it gets interesting. Jesse leaned in closer. Sergio Roscoe isn't just muscle. He's smart. Former military. Dishonorable discharge for excessive force. He knows how to make things look like accidents. I found communication between an encrypted number we traced to Dunbar and Orozco dating back 8 months. They were planning something big. Devin's phone buzzed. Kurt Monroe. Brenda made bail. Dunbar's lawyer got her out an hour ago. She's at a hotel downtown. Ankle monitor can't leave the county, but she's out. Of course she is, Devin muttered. He looked at Jesse. I need you to do something that might cross some legal lines. Jesse grinned. My favorite kind of work. I need complete surveillance on Brenda, Clinton, and Orozco. Phones, emails, physical location, everything. I need to know what they're planning next. They'll lawyer up, stop communicating. No, Devin said, a plan forming in his mind. They're arrogant. They think they've won because she's out on bail. They'll make mistakes. And when they do, I'll be ready. What are you planning? Devin looked at his sleeping son, then back at Jesse. I'm going to destroy them. Not just jail. I'm going to take everything they have, everyone they care about, and burn it to the ground. But I need to be smart. Patient. Build the case brick by brick. The Devin Bacon special. Exactly. Over the next 3 days, while Jake recovered under hospital supervision, Devin built his operation. He took a leave of absence from his firm, set up a command center in his home office, and started gathering intelligence. Jesse's team, 3 former cops and 2 tech specialists, provided round-the-clock surveillance. They discovered that Brenda had moved into Clinton's mansion in the affluent Windermere neighborhood. The ankle monitor restricted her movements, but Clinton visited her daily. Sergio Roscoe was spotted at the mansion twice. The communications Jesse intercepted painted a clear picture. Clinton and Brenda had been planning this for nearly a year. The affair started as a simple office romance, but when Clinton's company started failing, it evolved into something darker. Brenda suggested the insurance scheme: kill her family, claim the money, and use it to save Clinton's business. In return, she'd become his wife and partner. Sergio was the hired gun, brought in to make Devin's death look accidental. The plan was to poison Jake first, make it look like a tragic illness, collect that insurance, then stage a home invasion gone wrong, where Devin would be killed. Brenda would play the traumatized widow, and no one would question it. But Jake's collapse at school had forced them to accelerate. The poisoning had been meant to be slower, untraceable. Brenda's panic when Jake collapsed immediately had made her sloppy. Now, they were cornered and dangerous. On the 4th day, Jake was released from the hospital. Devin took him to a safe house, a cabin owned by Jesse's brother in the northern woods, 3 hours from Detroit. He hired private security, former military contractors who owed Jesse favors. Jake would be safe there while Devin finished this. Dad, why can't Mom visit? Jake asked as Devin tucked him in the first night. Devin sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. Mom did something very bad, buddy. She hurt you. Do you remember her giving you a drink that morning? Jake nodded slowly. She said it was a special vitamin drink to help me be strong. That drink made you sick. Very sick. Mom put bad stuff in it. Jake's eyes welled with tears. Why would Mom hurt me? It was the question that tore at Devin's heart. I don't know, son, but I promise you, I'm going to make sure she never hurts you again. And I'm going to make sure the people who helped her pay for what they did. Chapter 4. The trap is set. Devin returned to Detroit with a clarity of purpose he hadn't felt since his police days. Kurt Monroe kept him updated on the official investigation. Brenda's lawyer was building a defense, claiming the poisoning was accidental, that she'd grabbed the wrong bottle that morning, that the insurance policies were standard financial planning. Clinton Dunbar's high-priced legal team was creating separation between him and Brenda, claiming they were just employer and employee, nothing more. But Devin had always been better at the long game than the system allowed. He started with reconnaissance. Jesse's surveillance had mapped Clinton's routine. Morning run at 6 a.m., office by 8, business lunches, evening drinks at the Monarch Club downtown, home by 8 p.m. Brenda's ankle monitor kept her confined to Clinton's mansion, but she wasn't idle. Phone records showed she was coordinating with a different lawyer, someone who specialized in getting charges dismissed on technicalities. Sergio Orozco was the wild card. He'd gone aground after Brenda's arrest, but Jesse's team tracked him to a rundown apartment in southwest Detroit. He was still on Dunbar's payroll, waiting for instructions. Devin decided to exploit their greatest weakness, arrogance. He called a press conference, something he'd learned from his years working high-profile cases. With Kurt's reluctant blessing, he stood before cameras and delivered a calculated performance. My name is Devin Bacon. 2 weeks ago, my wife Brenda poisoned our 9-year-old son in an attempt to kill him for insurance money. She's currently out on bail, living with her lover Clinton Dunbar, who we believe helped plan the murder. The system is allowing wealthy criminals to buy their freedom while my son recovers from being poisoned by his own mother. The media erupted. Within hours, it was the top story. Clinton's business partners started calling for explanations. Brenda's lawyer demanded a retraction. But the damage was done. Public opinion had turned venomous. That night, Jesse's surveillance caught Clinton and Brenda arguing in the mansion study. "You told me this would be clean." Clinton's voice, enhanced by the parabolic microphone aimed at the window. "It would have been if you hadn't rushed me. I told you we needed more time." "We don't have time. The business is hemorrhaging money. The board is asking questions. If we don't get that insurance money soon, I'm bankrupt." "Well, maybe you should have thought of that before pushing me to poison a child in broad daylight." Devin listened to the recording with grim satisfaction. They were fracturing. Fear made people stupid. He made his next move. Through a series of anonymous tips to the SEC, he revealed irregularities in Dunbar Industries' financial statements. Not fraud that Clinton had committed, but suspicious enough to trigger an investigation. The board of directors received the same information. Within days, Clinton was suspended pending review. The pressure was mounting. Then came the night that changed everything. Devin was in his home office when Jesse called. "We got a problem. Orozco just left his apartment, armed. He's heading toward your neighborhood." Devin checked the security monitors. His house had cameras on every angle, motion sensors, and reinforced doors. Paranoia from his cop days paying dividends. "I see him. 2 blocks out. Police are en route. ETA 8 minutes. Too long." Devin opened his safe, pulled out his Glock 19. He maintained his firearms qualifications, shooting at the range monthly. "Let him come." Sergio Orozco was good, Devin admitted. He bypassed the front entrance, approaching from the wooded backyard, using shadows and blind spots. But Devin had designed this security system himself. He tracked Orozco's approach on thermal imaging, watched him pick the lock on the rear door with professional efficiency. Devin waited in the darkened kitchen, gun drawn, breathing controlled. The door eased open. Orozco stepped inside, weapon raised, a suppressed pistol, professional grade. "Drop it," Devin said from the shadows, his gun aimed at center mass. Orozco spun, fast but not fast enough. Devin fired twice, one round into Orozco's shoulder, spinning him the second into his thigh. The intruder collapsed, his gun clattering away. Devin kicked the weapon aside, zip-tied Orozco's hands behind his back, then applied pressure to the leg wound to prevent him from bleeding out. "Who sent you? Clinton or Brenda?" Orozco laughed, blood on his teeth. "You're dead anyway, cop. You just don't know it yet. We'll see." Police arrived 4 minutes later. Kurt Monroe supervised the scene personally. Sergio Orozco was taken to the hospital under armed guard, charged with attempted murder, breaking and entering, and weapons violations. But the real treasure was Orozco's phone, which Devin had pocketed before the police arrived. A burner, but not wiped. Jesse's tech specialist cracked it within hours. The messages were damning. Clinton had ordered the hit personally, offering $200,000 for Devin's death to be staged as a home invasion. Brenda had approved the plan, even suggested the timing. Devin had what he needed for the official prosecution. But he wasn't done. Chapter 5: Unraveling Threads. with Sergio Orozco in custody and his phone providing ironclad evidence. The prosecutor's office moved to arrest Clinton Dunbar. But Clinton's lawyers had anticipated this. By the time the warrant was issued, Clinton had liquidated remaining assets and fled to his family's estate in the Cayman Islands, a non-extradition country for certain financial crimes. Brenda, still under house arrest via ankle monitor, became the sole target of prosecution. But without Clinton to testify against, her lawyers were confident they could create reasonable doubt. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. Devin sat in Kurt Monroe's office, studying the case file. He ran. Coward's move, Kurt agreed. But he's smart. The Caymans won't extradite for conspiracy charges without concrete evidence. He personally ordered the hit. We have Orozco's phone, which his lawyers will argue was manipulated or faked. Without Clinton here to confirm, it's circumstantial. Devin leaned back, thinking. Clinton Dunbar had one weakness: his ego. The man had spent his life as the smartest person in every room, playing chess while others played checkers. But Devin had spent 12 years anticipating the moves of murderers and sociopaths. He knew how to play the long game. What if we bring him back? Devin said. How? We can't touch him in the Caymans. We don't have to. We just need to make him think he's one. Over the next 2 weeks, Devin orchestrated a carefully staged collapse. Through intermediaries and planted news stories, he created the narrative that the prosecution's case was falling apart. The evidence against Brenda was being challenged on technical grounds. Orozco's phone might be inadmissible due to chain of custody issues. Without Clinton's testimony, Brenda might walk. Jesse's team planted false information in legal forums that Brenda's lawyer frequented, suggesting that if Clinton stayed away for just a few more months, the whole case would likely be dismissed. The statute of limitations, jurisdictional technicalities, the works. Clinton took the bait. Jesse's contacts in the Caymans reported that Clinton had started making plans to return. He'd been living in exile, cut off from his business and social circle, watching his empire crumble from afar. The prospect of coming home to freedom and rebuilding was too tempting. But Devin's real masterstroke was the financial angle. Through a series of shell companies and anonymous purchases, he'd been quietly buying up Dunbar Industries, stock at pennies on the dollar, as the company collapsed. He now controlled 42% of the company. Not quite controlling interest, but close. He arranged a board meeting, showing up as the surprise majority stakeholder with Jesse and a team of corporate lawyers. The remaining board members, desperate to save their investments, listened to his proposal: restructure the company, install new leadership, and most importantly, cooperate fully with authorities regarding Clinton Dunbar's activities. The company's internal documents revealed a pattern of financial misconduct that went beyond the insurance scheme. Clinton had been cooking the books for years, using company funds for personal expenses, bribing officials for contracts. The SEC investigation that Devin had triggered uncovered layers of criminal activity. Armed with this new evidence, federal prosecutors issued an updated warrant for Clinton Dunbar, this time for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering, crimes that the Cayman Islands would extradite for. Clinton's lawyers, seeing the writing on the wall, negotiated his return. He flew back to Detroit on a Tuesday morning, expecting to surrender, make bail, and fight the charges with his legal team. Instead, he was arrested at the airport and denied bail due to flight risk. The evidence was overwhelming. The company's CFO, granted immunity, testified that Clinton had personally ordered the fraudulent transactions. The SEC had frozen all his accounts. His mansion was seized as proceeds of criminal activity. Clinton Dunbar, who'd lived his entire life in luxury, was now in a county jail cell, wearing an orange jumpsuit and facing 40 years in federal prison. Devin watched the arrest on the news from Jake's hospital room. His son was there for a follow-up examination, healthy and healing. "Is that the bad man?" Jake asked. "One of them," Devin replied. "The other one goes on trial next week." Chapter 6: The Trial. Brenda's trial began on a cold Monday in November. The prosecution had a strong case. The security footage, the poison bottle with her fingerprints, the insurance policies, the intercepted communications with Clinton and Orozco. But her lawyer, a sharp woman named Lee Sargent, was mounting an aggressive defense. Devin sat in the gallery every day, stone-faced, as Lee argued that Brenda was a victim of Clinton's manipulation, that she'd been coerced, threatened, psychologically abused into participating in a scheme she didn't fully understand, that the communications were taken out of context, that Clinton had acted alone and was trying to frame Brenda for his crimes. It was a clever strategy, and it might have worked if Devin hadn't prepared for it. On the third day of trial, the prosecution called a surprise witness, Dr. Robert Hogan, a forensic psychologist who'd spent 20 hours interviewing Brenda during her jail stay after violating her house arrest conditions by attempting to contact Clinton. Dr. Hogan testified that Brenda exhibited clear signs of narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. She showed no genuine remorse for poisoning Jake, only regret at being caught. During their sessions, she'd repeatedly blamed her son for ruining everything by collapsing too quickly. She'd shown no empathy, no emotional connection to the harm she'd caused. In my professional opinion, Dr. Hogan stated, Ms. Bacon is a calculated, manipulative individual who viewed her son as an obstacle to financial gain. Her actions were premeditated and intentional. The courtroom buzzed. Lee Sargent objected strenuously, but the testimony stood. The jury's expressions shifted from sympathy to disgust. But Devin's coup de grace came on day 5. Jesse had been working another angle, tracking Brenda's digital footprint. While she'd been careful to delete communications with Clinton and Orozco, she'd made a critical mistake. She'd kept a journal on a password-protected app on her tablet. The journal detailed everything. Her growing resentment toward Devin for settling into a boring middle-class life. Her attraction to Clinton's wealth and power. Her discovery of his financial troubles, and her realization that she could solve both their problems with a simple murder-for-insurance scheme. The journal even included practice drafts of what she'd say to police if caught, all written months before Jake's poisoning. Entry from 3 months before the incident. Jake is worth more to me dead than alive. $500,000 is just the start. Once the cops rule it natural causes, we could do Devin next. $2 million from his policy. Start fresh. Clinton and I can finally be together without the dead weight. Jesse had obtained the tablet through a perfectly legal warrant served on Brenda's cloud storage provider. The journal was authenticated by digital forensics experts. The prosecution entered it into evidence. Lee Sargent tried to challenge it, arguing privacy violations, but the judge allowed it. The journal entries were read aloud in court. Brenda's careful mask of victimhood shattered as the jury heard her own words describing her son as dead weight and planning her husband's murder with clinical detachment. Devin watched Brenda's face as the journal was read. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. She thought she could charm or manipulate her way out, but her own words condemned her. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder of a minor, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, child endangerment. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman named Judith Rivers who had grandchildren Jake's age, showed no mercy. Mrs. Bacon, you violated the most fundamental bond that exists, the bond between mother and child. You poisoned your own son for money. You planned to murder your husband. You showed no remorse, no humanity. This court sentences you to 45 years in state prison without possibility of parole for 30 years. Brenda finally broke, screaming that it wasn't fair, that Clinton had forced her, that they were all against her. Bailiffs dragged her from the courtroom as she hurled curses and threats. Devin felt no satisfaction in her breakdown, only a cold certainty that justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed him. He gave a brief statement. My son is safe. The people who tried to kill him are in prison. That's all that matters. But he was lying. There was one more piece to put in place. Chapter 7, the final piece. Clinton Dunbar's federal trial was set for January, but Devin knew the man would never make it that far. Not in the way that mattered. Through Jesse's network, Devin learned that Clinton had been placed in general population at the county jail, a bureaucratic oversight that would normally be corrected for someone of his wealth and status. But Devin had quietly ensured through certain contacts in the correctional system who owed him favors, that the paperwork to transfer Clinton to protective custody got delayed. County jail general population was a dangerous place for wealthy, white-collar criminals. The other inmates, many of them fathers who'd lost custody of their children, men who'd grown up in poverty, didn't take kindly to rich men who poisoned kids for insurance money. Clinton lasted 3 days before requesting protective custody. But by then, the damage was done. He'd been beaten twice, had his commissary stolen daily, and lived in constant fear. The man who'd lived in a mansion was now sleeping on a thin mattress in a 6x8 cell, jumping at every shadow. But Devin's revenge went deeper than physical discomfort. Jesse's investigation into Dunbar Industries had revealed something interesting. Clinton had a sister, Whitney Draper, who ran a non-profit foundation for children's literacy. She'd built her reputation on being the good Dunbar, distancing herself from her brother's corporate ruthlessness. She'd been vocal in the media about cutting ties with Clinton after his arrest. But Jesse discovered that Whitney had known about the financial fraud for months. She'd received payments from Clinton's shell companies, laundered through her foundation. She'd been complicit in the fraud, even if she hadn't been involved in the murder plot. Devin anonymously provided this information to federal investigators. Whitney was arrested on charges of money laundering and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her nonprofit was shut down. Her reputation was destroyed. Clinton's parents, elderly and horrified by their son's actions, issued a public statement disowning him and cutting off all financial support. The Dunbar family name, which had been respected in Detroit business circles for 3 generations, was now synonymous with greed and child murder. Devin's takeover of Dunbar Industries was completed through bankruptcy court. He restructured it, renamed it Riverside Manufacturing, after Jake's school, and made it profitable again by cutting the corruption and restoring ethical business practices. The company's revival made headlines. The detective who'd exposed the murderous CEO now saving the company and its jobs. But the personal victory came in February. Clinton's trial proceeded without much drama. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers negotiated a plea deal, 40 years in federal prison in exchange for full cooperation and asset forfeiture. Clinton took it, knowing he'd die in prison either way. The day Clinton was sentenced, Devin visited him in the federal holding facility. It was against protocol, but Kurt Monroe arranged it as a personal favor. They sat across from each other in a small room, separated by plexiglass. Clinton looked haggard, his expensive haircut grown out, his tan faded, eyes hollow. "You destroyed everything," Clinton said, his voice flat. "My company, my family, my life. You tried to kill my son," Devin replied calmly. "Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I could have made bail, fought this, if you hadn't manipulated the system." "I didn't manipulate anything. I just played the game better than you. You thought you were untouchable because you had money and lawyers. But you forgot something important." "What's that?" Devin leaned forward. "I spent 12 years studying people like you. I know how you think, how you move, how you fall. You were playing checkers. I was playing chess." Clinton's face twisted with rage. "When I get out, you won't. You'll die in prison. Your sister will die in prison. Brenda will die in prison. And every day you're in there, you'll know that the boring security consultant you dismissed destroyed your entire world because you made one mistake. You came after my family." Devin stood to leave. "One more thing," he added. "Dunbar Industries. Sorry, Riverside Manufacturing. We just landed the contract your company lost last year. The one that started your financial problems. We're profitable now. Growing. I'm using the profits to establish a trust fund for children who've been victims of parental abuse. Jake wanted to call it the Second Chance Fund. I thought that was fitting." He walked out, leaving Clinton staring at the plexiglass, the magnitude of his defeat finally sinking in. Chapter 8. Aftermath. Spring came to Michigan with the usual tentative warmth. Jake, now 10 years old, had recovered fully from the poisoning. The nightmares had faded with therapy, replaced by a cautious optimism. He'd started playing baseball again, his first love, and Devin never missed a game. Devin had sold their old house, too many bad memories, and bought a smaller place closer to Jesse's neighborhood. It had a big backyard where Jake could practice his pitching and a front porch where Devin could drink his coffee and watch the morning traffic. Riverside Manufacturing was thriving. Devin had hired a CEO to run daily operations, a sharp woman named Angela Liu who'd turned around failing companies before. He stayed on as chairman, focusing on strategy and ensuring the company maintained ethical standards. The Second Chance Fund had already helped 43 children escape abusive situations, providing legal support, counseling, and financial assistance. Sergio Orozco had taken a plea deal, testifying against both Clinton and Brenda in exchange for 20 years instead of life. He'd be eligible for parole in 12. Devin had attended every hearing, every proceeding, ensuring the deals were as harsh as legally possible. But the real victory was smaller, more personal. One Saturday morning in April, Devin was teaching Jake how to throw a curveball in the backyard. The kid had a good arm, natural athlete instincts. "Dad," Jake said, catching the ball Devin tossed back. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, buddy. Do you still love Mom?" Devin had known this question would come eventually. He sat down on the porch steps, and Jake joined him. "I love the person I thought she was," Devin said carefully. "But that person never really existed. She was pretending to be someone she wasn't. The real her, no, I don't love who she really is. Is it my fault she hurt me?" "No." Devin put his arm around his son. "Nothing you did caused this. Some people are broken inside in ways we can't fix. Your mom is one of those people. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's just the way she is." Jake nodded slowly, processing this. "I'm glad you caught her." "Me too. Are you going to find a new mom for me?" Devin smiled. "Maybe someday. But right now, it's just you and me, kid. And I think we're doing pretty okay." "We're doing great, Dad." They threw the ball back and forth as the sun climbed higher. Father and son, survivors of a nightmare that had tried to destroy them and failed. That evening, Kurt Monroe stopped by with a six-pack of beer. They sat on the porch while Jake played video games inside. Clinton tried to appeal his sentence. Kurt said, "Denied. He's being transferred to a maximum security facility in Texas next month. Brenda's at the Women's Correctional in Ypsilanti. She's already had 3 disciplinary violations for fighting." "Good," Devin said. "You did it by the book, mostly." "I'm impressed." "Mostly." Kurt grinned. The tablet with Brenda's journal. Jesse's warrant was technically valid, but the timing was suspiciously perfect. Like you knew exactly when to look and where. "Can't prove anything." "Don't want to. Sometimes the system needs help. You just made sure justice actually got served." Kurt took a long drink. "You know what bugs me, though?" "What?" "You never showed any emotion through this whole thing. Not rage, not grief, nothing. It's like you were made of ice." Devin considered this. "I learned a long time ago that emotion makes you sloppy. When I was working homicide, the cases that went cold were the ones where we let anger or grief drive our decisions. The ones we solved were the ones where we stayed cold, calculated, patient. But this was your family." "Exactly. Which is why I couldn't afford to be emotional. I had to be perfect. No mistakes, no second chances. They came after my son. The only acceptable outcome was complete victory." Kurt nodded slowly. "Well, you got it. Total victory. Clinton destroyed, Brenda destroyed, Orozco locked up, their families ruined, your business thriving, Jake safe and healing. You couldn't have planned it better." "I did plan it that well," Devin said quietly. "Every step. From the moment I saw that security footage, I knew exactly how this would end. I just had to execute." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the street lights flicker on as dusk fell. Chapter 9. The Long Game. 1 year later, Devin stood in the visitors area of the Federal Correctional Facility in Texas. Clinton Dunbar shuffled in, wearing prison blues, his once polished appearance now completely eroded. Prison had aged him 20 years. Gray hair, gaunt face, the arrogant confidence replaced by hollow defeat. "Why are you here?" Clinton asked, sitting across from Devin. "Closure," Devin said. "I wanted to see how you were adjusting." "Adjusting." Clinton laughed bitterly. "I wake up every day in hell." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" "Partly. But I also wanted to tell you something you might find interesting. Remember your board of directors at Dunbar Industries? The ones who sold me their stock. What about them?" They're all doing quite well now. Riverside Manufacturing paid out dividends last quarter. They made their money back and then some. Some of them even thanked me for saving their investments. Clinton's jaw clenched. You're rubbing it in? No, I'm making a point. You had everything: money, power, respect. And you threw it away because you couldn't handle one business setback. Instead of rebuilding legitimately, you decided to murder a child for insurance money. That's not ruthless business strategy. That's just evil stupidity. I was desperate. You were weak. And now you're paying the price. Devin leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You'll serve your 40 years. Maybe you'll die in here. Maybe you'll get out at 85, broken and forgotten. Brenda's in the same boat. Orozco's looking at parole in 11 more years, but he'll be a middle-aged ex-con with no prospects. And you? Jake and I are doing great. He's 11 now, straight A student, star pitcher on his little league team. He's seeing a therapist, processing everything that happened. He asked about you last week. Actually, what did he ask? He wanted to know if you felt sorry for what you did. I told him probably not, that people like you don't really feel remorse. Was I right? Clinton stared at him, and Devin saw the truth in his eyes. No remorse, only self-pity and rage at being caught. That's what I thought, Devin said. Jake's a smart kid. He understands that sometimes bad people exist, and all we can do is make sure they can't hurt anyone else. You taught him that lesson in the worst way possible, but he's stronger for it. I hope he grows up knowing what his father really is, Clinton spat. A manipulative bastard who destroyed people. No, Devin corrected. I destroyed people who tried to murder my son. There's a difference. And Jake knows exactly what I am. A father who protected his child and made sure justice was served. He's proud of me. Can you say the same about your family? Clinton looked away, and Devin knew he'd struck the final blow. Clinton's parents had died without reconciling with him. His sister wouldn't take his calls from prison. He was alone, completely and utterly. Devin stood. I won't visit again. This is goodbye, Clinton. Enjoy the next 40 years. He walked out without looking back. Outside, Jesse was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against Devin's car. How'd it go? Jesse asked. Exactly as expected. He's broken. Good. Jesse handed him a folder. Wedding invitation came to your office. I signed for it. Devin opened it. Dr. Margaret Arnold, the ER doctor who'd saved Jake's life, was getting married. She'd become a friend over the past year, checking in on Jake regularly. The invitation was personal, warm. You going? Jesse asked. Yeah, Jake and I both. She's been good to us. They drove back to Detroit in comfortable silence. Devin thought about the long road he'd traveled, from that terrifying call about Jake collapsing, through the investigation, the trial, the systematic destruction of everyone who'd threatened his family. It had taken patience, intelligence, and a willingness to play the long game. But it had been worth it. Jake was waiting at home, excited because his team had won their game that afternoon. Devin listened to his son's play-by-play description of the final inning, laughing at Jake's dramatic reenactment of the winning strikeout. Later that night, after Jake was asleep, Devin sat in his home office and looked at the wall where he'd kept his investigation board during the darkest days. It was clean now, repainted, holding pictures of Jake's baseball team instead of surveillance photos and evidence timelines. He opened his bottom desk drawer and pulled out a file, the only remaining record of the investigation, the parts that would never see a courtroom. The evidence of exactly how he'd manipulated Clinton into coming back from the Caymans. The planted stories, the false rumors, the carefully orchestrated pressure campaign. The way he'd ensured Clinton was placed in general population. The anonymous tips that had destroyed Whitney Draper's life. Devin had spent 12 years as a cop learning that the system was imperfect. It caught most criminals, but the smart ones, the rich ones, the ones who could afford good lawyers, they often slipped through. He'd seen murderers walk on technicalities, seen victims denied justice because of procedural errors. He'd vowed, then, that if anyone ever came after his family, he wouldn't rely solely on the system. He'd use it, manipulate it, guide it to the outcome he needed. He'd become the chess player, moving pieces until checkmate was inevitable. And he'd won. Devin lit a match and held it to the file, watching the papers catch fire. He dropped them into a metal wastebasket, watching years of careful planning and calculated revenge burn to ash. There was no evidence now, nothing to connect him to the extra-legal aspects of Clinton and Brenda's destruction. Just a father who'd protected his son, using nothing but legal means in legitimate investigation. The fire burned out. Devin dumped the ashes in the trash,